Have you ever felt an instant connection with a stranger that you couldn't explain? Do you believe in second chances when it comes to love? Let's find out. Winds of the Heart Part 1. In the bustling city of Verdun, life moved at a fast pace, but there were still places where time seemed to slow down. One of those places was a small, cozy bookstore tucked away on a quiet street corner. It was filled with the scent of old books and the soft rustling of pages. The walls were lined with shelves that reached the ceiling, packed with novels, poetry collections, and art books. The air was always calm, and it was the perfect escape from the busy world outside. One sunny afternoon, a young woman named Daisy walked into the bookstore. Daisy was an artist, and she had always loved reading, especially old novels that told stories of love, adventure, and hope. She enjoyed losing herself in these tales, and she often found inspiration for her art in the words she read. On this particular day, she was searching for something new to read, something that would spark her imagination. As she wandered through the aisles, her fingers gently brushed against the spines of the books, feeling the worn textures of the covers. She smiled to herself, content in this peaceful moment. It was then that she noticed someone standing a few shelves away. It was a young man, completely absorbed in a book of poetry. He didn't seem to notice Daisy, but something about him caught her attention. The young man's name was James, and he was a writer. He spent most of his time crafting stories, but he also loved poetry. The way words could paint pictures and stir emotions fascinated him. He visited the bookstore often, finding comfort in the quiet atmosphere, where he could lose himself in the beauty of language. That afternoon, he was deep in thought, reading a poem that spoke of love and longing. Daisy watched him for a moment, feeling a sense of curiosity. She wasn't sure what it was, but there was something about James that intrigued her. Gathering her courage, she walked over and glanced at the book in his hands. Do you like poetry?" Daisy asked softly, hoping she wasn't interrupting his moment. James looked up, surprised to find someone speaking to him. He smiled warmly. "I do. There's something special about the way poems capture emotions with just a few words." Daisy nodded, her own smile forming. "I feel the same way about novels. They have a way of taking me to new places and making me feel things I never expected." And just like that, a conversation began. They talked about their favorite books, sharing the titles that had left a mark on them. Daisy told James about her love for painting and how books often inspired her work. James in turn spoke about his passion for writing and how he tried to weave emotions into every story he created. They discovered they had more in common than they had expected. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the bookstore's windows, Daisy and James realized they had been talking for hours. It was as if time had stopped for them, and neither wanted the conversation to end. Before they left, James suggested they meet again, perhaps to continue their talk about books and art. Daisy agreed, feeling a flutter of excitement in her chest. From that day on, Daisy and James met regularly. Sometimes they would return to the bookstore, browsing the shelves together and recommending books to each other. Other times, they explored the city, finding hidden cafes and quiet parks where Daisy could sketch while James read aloud from his favorite books. Their shared love for creativity brought them closer, and soon their friendship blossomed into something more. In those early days, their laughter filled the air wherever they went. They talked about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Daisy and James felt a connection that neither had experienced before. It was a love that grew naturally without effort, like flowers blooming in the spring. As time went on, Daisy and James grew closer with each passing day. Their connection, which had started with a simple conversation in the bookstore, deepened into something much more. They found themselves wanting to spend more time together, and each moment felt special. It wasn't just about the books they loved or the art and writing that inspired them. It was about how they made each other feel. On weekends, they would often wander through the city together, exploring new places and hidden gems. One of their favorite spots was a small cafe on the edge of a quiet park. The cafe had a cozy corner by the window where Daisy and James would sit for hours sipping coffee or tea and talking about anything and everything. Daisy would sometimes bring her sketchbook, and while she drew, James would read aloud from a novel or a poem. They would laugh together, share their thoughts, and simply enjoy each other's company. It was during these moments that their bond truly blossomed. Daisy loved how James's voice sounded when he read, calm and thoughtful, bringing the words to life in a way that made her heart flutter. James, in turn, admired the way Daisy's hands moved across the paper, creating beautiful images with such ease. They supported each other's passions, and it made their relationship even stronger. One evening, as the sun began to set, James invited Daisy to a special picnic by the lake. He had planned everything carefully, wanting it to be perfect. As they arrived at the lake, Daisy's eyes widened in surprise. Lanterns were strung up in the trees, casting a soft, warm glow over the area. A blanket was laid out on the grass with baskets of food and flowers arranged around it. The reflection of the lanterns danced on the surface of the water, creating a magical atmosphere. Daisy was speechless. She turned to James, her eyes filled with emotion. "Did you do all of this?" she asked, her voice soft with wonder. James smiled a little shyly. "I wanted to do something special for you. You mean a lot to me, Daisy." They sat down together, and as they ate, they talked about their dreams for the future. Daisy shared her hope of one day having her own art studio, where she could display her work and teach others to paint. James talked about his wish to publish a novel, a story that would touch people's hearts the way books had touched his. They encouraged each other, and their dreams felt even more possible when they shared them. After the meal, James pulled out his guitar, something Daisy hadn't known he could play. "I wrote something for you," he said, his voice a little nervous but full of sincerity. As James strummed the guitar and began to sing, Daisy felt her heart swell. The song was simple, but every word felt meaningful. It was about their journey together, from the moment they met to the connection they now shared. As he finished the song, James looked into Daisy's eyes, his feelings for her clear and strong. Tears welled up in Daisy's eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of love and joy she felt in that moment. She had never expected to find someone who understood her so well, who supported her dreams and made her feel so cherished. "I love it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "And I love you, James." Hearing those words, James smiled, his heart full. "I love you too, Daisy." From that day on, their relationship seemed to grow even stronger. They were no longer just two people who shared a love for art and books. They were partners, supporting each other in every way. Their friends noticed the change in them and admired how well they complemented each other. Daisy's family, too, saw how happy she was with James, and they welcomed him into their lives with open arms. James's family also embraced Daisy, loving how her creativity and kindness brought out the best in him. The two families grew closer, and it wasn't long before their friends started talking about how perfect Daisy and James were together. It seemed like everyone around them could see what they had, a love that was true, deep, and built on mutual respect. Daisy and James often talked about their future. They dreamed of traveling together, seeing the world, and finding inspiration for their art and writing in new places. They imagined living in a small, cozy home where Daisy could have her art studio and James could have a quiet space to write. It all felt like it was within reach, and they believed that together they could achieve anything. Even on the days when life was busy and stressful, Daisy and James found time for each other. Whether it was a quick coffee break or a late-night phone call, they made sure to stay connected. Their love was their anchor, something they could rely on no matter what challenges they faced. One evening, as they walked through the park hand in hand, Daisy looked up at James and smiled. "Do you think we'll always be this happy?" she asked. James squeezed her hand gently. "I think we will, as long as we keep supporting each other the way we do now." Daisy nodded, feeling a sense of peace. She believed him. After all, they had already shared so much and overcome small obstacles together. Whatever the future held, she knew they would face it side by side. Daisy and James had been together for several months now, and their relationship seemed stronger than ever. They had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, spending weekends together, supporting each other's dreams, and making plans for their future. Everything felt perfect, almost too good to be true. Daisy was even planning a surprise for James for their upcoming anniversary, something special to show him just how much he meant to her. But then something unexpected happened, something that would turn their world upside down. One evening, Daisy was sitting in her living room working on a new painting. Her phone buzzed with a message and she reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting it to be one of her friends or family members. But as she opened the message, her heart sank. The message was from an unknown number, but the words were unmistakably familiar. It read, "Daisy, I've been thinking a lot lately and I'm not sure about us anymore. I need some space to figure things out. I hope you understand. James?" Daisy stared at the screen, her chest tightening with a mix of confusion and pain. She read the message over and over again, hoping she had misunderstood it somehow. How could this be? They had just been talking about their future together a few days ago. They had been so happy. How could James feel this way without saying anything to her in person? Her first instinct was to call him, but her hands trembled too much to dial the number. Instead, she sent a text. "What's going on, James? Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Why didn't we talk about it?" She waited for a reply, but none came. Minutes felt like hours as she sat there staring at her phone, her mind racing with questions. Had she done something wrong? Had she missed the signs? Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought of all the special moments they had shared. It didn't make sense. None of it did. The next day, Daisy couldn't take it any longer. She had to see James face to face. She went to his apartment, her heart heavy with anxiety. When James opened the door, he was surprised to see her. "Daisy," he said, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Is everything okay?" Daisy held up her phone, her voice shaky as she spoke. "I got your message last night, the one saying you needed space. James, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't we discuss this?" James's eyes widened in shock. "What message? I didn't send you any message." Daisy blinked, her confusion growing. "But it came from you. It said it was from you." James shook his head, genuinely baffled. "I didn't send anything, right? Daisy, I swear. I don't know what you're talking about." Daisy handed him her phone and James looked at the message. His face paled as he realized what she was talking about. "I didn't write this," he said firmly. "This isn't me. I would never do this to you." But Daisy's mind was spinning. She wanted to believe him, but how could she? The message had come from a number that seemed like his, and the words had felt so real. "Then how do you explain this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How do I know this isn't just your way of trying to end things without saying it to my face?" James stepped closer, his expression filled with hurt. "Daisy, I love you. I wouldn't do that. You have to believe me. There's been some kind of mistake." But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Daisy felt torn between wanting to trust James and the fear that maybe, just maybe, he was hiding something. "I need some time to think," she whispered, stepping back. "I don't know what to believe right now." James reached out, trying to stop her. "Daisy, please, don't go. We can figure this out together." But Daisy shook her head, her heart heavy. I just need some space. And with that, she walked away, leaving James standing in the doorway, confused and heartbroken. Over the next few days, Daisy tried to make sense of everything that had happened. She replayed the moment over and over again in her mind, wondering if she had made the right decision. Part of her wanted to believe James, but the pain of that message lingered in her heart. She felt betrayed, as though the future they had been building together had suddenly been ripped away. Meanwhile, James was equally devastated. He hadn't sent the message, and he couldn't understand who would want to tear them apart. He tried calling Daisy, but she didn't answer. He left her messages, but she didn't respond. It was as if their connection had been severed in an instant, and James felt powerless to fix it. Then, to make matters worse, James's phone was stolen. One day, while he was out running errands, he realized his phone was missing. He searched everywhere but couldn't find it. Frustrated, he had to get a new number and a new phone, which made it even harder to reach Daisy. It was as though everything was falling apart all at once. Daisy, meanwhile, felt as though she had lost not only her relationship, but her sense of security. She threw herself into her art, trying to keep herself busy, but nothing seemed to ease the ache in her chest. She missed James more than she could admit, but the message continued to haunt her. Days turned into weeks, and their communication remained broken. Both were hurt, confused, and unsure of how to move forward. What had once been a strong, beautiful relationship was now shadowed by doubt and mistrust. Weeks had passed since Daisy and James last spoke. Both were struggling with their emotions, torn between the love they still felt and the pain caused by the mysterious message. Neither of them could find a way to fix what had been broken. Daisy tried to move on by focusing on her art, while James buried himself in his writing. But no matter how busy they kept themselves, thoughts of each other always lingered. One afternoon, Daisy was in her studio trying to finish a painting, but her heart wasn't in it. She stared at the canvas, her mind drifting to memories of James. She missed him deeply, the way he used to read to her, the sound of his voice when he sang, and the warmth of his presence. She wondered if she had made a mistake by walking away. Just then, there was a knock at her door. Daisy hesitated for a moment before getting up to answer it. When she opened the door, she found an envelope lying on the ground. There was no name on it, just her address. Part 1 ends here. What may be written in that envelope? Who may have sent it, and where may it have come from? To find out, click the video here or follow the link in the description.